all of you to be here. This is also the first time we've been in this room, so thanks for vibing it out and coming and letting us like fill it with good feelings. This is the final Sunday service of the season, and so we're wrapping up our 4th micro season, so 2 years and something like 14 Sunday services. Because we have like 5 or something. Anyway, we'll count at some point. And you can also see the full archive of all of our performances, I think say 2, on our Vimeo and soon on our YouTube, so you can sit and feel your feelings and receive everybody's good vibes. Sunday service started as an experiment in thinking about how performance could be discourse, how gathering and liveness could be a way to think about a theme. So we started to invite artists, some of which hadn't curated very much, some of which had, but maybe not in this way, to think about a thematic question that they were working with in their own practice and utilize the opportunity of a live event to kind of make a room for that question. Miguel will tell you a little bit more about what his particular inquiry was and how he gathered all these great people. But thank you so much for being here. And tonight we have Miguel Gutierrez. That's you, baby. I'm done.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for coming out here. Thank you, Alexis and Stephanie, for making the space. Yeah, let's put our hands together for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you to the artists. Thank you to Osaro we have on music, and we have James on the video, and some person I don't know with a camera. That's great. That's great. Thank you for being here. I just want to kind of write it from the front just to say, originally Camilo Godoy was to be part of the lineup tonight, but unfortunately had a very intense life event happen, family event, last weekend, so he will not be joining us. But I did want to take just like a moment of silence to send him some good vibes. Take a breath. Thank you very much, Camilo. We love you. And I would like to try another thing as an experiment. I actually don't even have my glasses on right now. So if you would pair off or just turn to someone next to you, or you could also go into trios, no big deal. And you're like, oh no, what the fuck's gonna happen? Don't be alarmed. But I just want to do a really simple exercise, which is introduce yourself. That's why it's nice if it's someone you don't know. And tell this person or persons the story of your name. Just tell them why you have the name that you have. And if you're like, if you know the story of why if it was a name that was given to you by parents or some other kinds of people, why they chose that name. And if you know anything about what it means. Yeah? So we're gonna take like 5 to 10 minutes to do that. Let's do it. Go for it. Yeah, that's actually an exercise I learned from friends of mine in my Barbarian and Performance Art Collective, Malik Gaines and Alex Sagade and Jade Gordon. And I just think it's really interesting. And this is a prompt that I sent to the artists when I invited to perform here this evening. I said, I've been thinking about ancestry, which I see as a kind of fascination for many trans and or artists of color or artists of non-US based origin or all of the above. I'm left to wonder how people are contending with the ideas of the past to forge a future. Is this a question or a tension for folks or not? Maybe it's just my intention. Does any of this resonate for you? So it was pretty open-ended. But I've been working on a show called This Bridge Called My Ass, which opens next month. At the Chalk Factory. And it's an all Latinx cast, and I didn't plan for this to be the case, but everyone's bilingual, and that's just been a really interesting experience for me because I've never made a piece before with an all bilingual cast, and to have a room where we're speaking Spanish and English equally is really fascinating. But I've been thinking about the problem of ancestry and wondering some things like if we always have to be reverential about ancestry. And that partly also comes from, there's an artist, Keiko, who was in a workshop of mine this summer and did a piece, and they said this question in the middle of the piece where they said, I wonder if my ancestors would approve of me as a queer artist. And I thought that was a really interesting, provocative question. Because maybe they don't want us to call them forward, or if they come, then they won't like what they see. So, just some ideas out there. So we're gonna get started with our artists, and I'm just gonna introduce all the artists at once. We're gonna have first Evelyn Sanchez Narvaez, who is an internationally recognized stand-up artist with multiple Netflix specials. Her most recent special, Puta Mermaids, was just nominated for an unprecedented 15 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Writing, Best Complexion, and Best Hoops. We're actually really lucky that we got her for tonight. And then we're going to have Christian W., who is a Pushcart nominated poet. They are currently an MFA candidate in the NYU graduate poetry program. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, we'll do this other thing, and then we'll have Bryanna Bradley. That's Bryanna with a Y and 2 N's. She wanted me to make sure that her mom would want that said. Bryanna describes herself as a body based abroad, and Bryanna would like me to tell you that she's very happy to be here at the Knockdown Center. And just so you know, as the evening goes, if you need to move yourself in order to see the artist or hear them better, feel free to just get up and move. We can be pretty chill in here. So thanks, enjoy.
Miguel's always trying to embarrass me. It's not 15, it's 20. Hi, yeah, Knockdown service, Sunday service, Knockdown service. What's up? How's everybody feeling? Just like that? Okay. But y'all are lying. Like rugs. Because some of you are my friends, and some of you told me you're sad. So why are you clapping? And why I laugh at that is because the how are you doing question is really complicated for me right now. I was walking by someone and I was like, hi. And they're like, yeah, I'm good, thank you. I was just like, okay, yeah, thank you for offering that, but bitch, didn't nobody ask you. And then I was just like, okay. And then another time I was walking and then I saw someone else and I was like, they said hi to me, but they were like, hey, how are you? But it was like, hey, how are you? And I was standing here and I was like, English is my second language, but I'm sure he asked me a question that he didn't stay for. I was like, So then I thought, do I answer? And I'm just like, yeah, I don't feel well, as he's walking away. Or do I just be rude and then just not answer the question. And I've been thinking about that because now I do the thing where I'm like, yeah, I'm great, yeah, like 50 times a day. I mean, not really, not that many people ask, but by the time I get home and I'm like chilling with myself, I'm just like, I don't know what's wrong, but I'm also lying because I've inferred all day that, and affirmed that I was okay and I'm not. So that question is really troublesome to me, this thing of like, how are you? Like, it feels like it's just like this memorized script that somehow we've all created as like a one-liner, like, hi, how are you? But are we really asking? Do we really care? Do you have the time? Yeah, so I've just been thinking about that. Is anyone traveling for the holiday? Going somewhere? Yeah, okay. How are people getting there? Like train, bus, flying, carrier pigeon? Yeah, same. Hot air balloon, you know? I can't travel during a holiday. I just get like really annoyed with people traveling, and then I get like angry, and then I'm like really just like, man, I just like get so frustrated that I'm just like, man, fuck this shit, man, punk ass bitch, suck my clit. And then I'm just like, Evelyn, that's kind of way out there, because what if they do want to suck my clit? And then what? I'm just kind of supposed to let them because I offered it, and I'm just like, maybe, I don't know, you know, because like, what if they make me come? I'm like, yes, and then what if they don't? And then also, what if they're like really good and then they make me squirt, and then I'm like supposed to just like walk onto the plane with some wet pants, like, and then what, it's in public, and then I'm just like, yeah, and that's why I just like stay home and don't travel, because it's just too much. It's just too much. Oh, but like side note, my mom called me and she was like, yeah, I have to go return the little pajamas for Yaretsi, my niece, and she's like, las pijamas de Rodolfo, and I was like, who? What character is this? She's like, Rodolfo, and like, el de la nose roja, like the one with the red nose, and I, exactly. My mom was just like, Rudolph's name is Rodolfo, like that's what we know. My mom was crazy. Yeah, I don't know, I really like her. This fall has been really interesting. Oh yeah, I'm checking my watch for time because I have to be somewhere else. No, I'm kidding. No, for real. No, I don't know. This like fall has been really interesting. I've somehow my like emotions lined up with the season, and I've been like, okay, time to die and mulch and compost. I got it, you know. But it's been really hard because some of that has been through like my mobility. I hurt myself in a rehearsal, and I've actually been pretty immobile in the way that I'm used to. So that's been really hard. And I've been thinking about like how unfair it is that happened to me and all this other stuff. And then just like the way it was handled is really unfair. Like if I'm being really honest, it kind of like came down to like indirectly I was let go because of the lack of mobility. And last time I checked, that was kind of illegal, I think, but I don't know. So yeah, I've been thinking about that, and because I haven't been able to move, I've been at home and I've been cooking, and I've been just been like being forced to listen to things that I usually don't have the time to do or think are important. And my grandma's been coming back up a lot. She's an intense person, I believe, but she's been coming up through different ways. Like I find myself at the grocery store gathering like the dollar produce that's like almost pretty much like rotten, but it's like $1, and I cut up the old pieces, and then I just like make food with what I have, and it makes me feel good that I can see the goodness even in things that are dying. Yeah, that somehow seems important. And then somehow I like tapped back into this memory that my mom shared with me, where my grandma used to go around the market and mercado, and she would do the same thing. She would just gather all of the food that was pretty much done and rotting because she couldn't afford anything else. And she would just make these like bomb things with it, which is like, okay, like I can see her kind of like filtering through with me through that. And another thing, but this is just like me questioning because I've never met her. I am a hoochie. Like I love like throwing it in a circle. I love being in short shorts, and my mom's not like that. My dad's not like that. So I'm like, yo, was my grandma a thotty? Like I think about this. Like, if she could have had the privilege of knowing herself, like I wonder if like that's who she would have been, or if like if I get that part of me from her. So I've been like not questioning it, or not asking her, but questioning it, because yeah, who knows if she'll like what she sees. My mom also says that God, ayuda a los mensos, which is like God helps the dumb. I qualify. But even more so than that, hey Jay, do you mind passing me my laptop that's behind you? Thanks. But even more so than that, I think it's my grandma who's actually helping me, because I mean, I've been saved a lot from a lot of things. So I don't know, I've been thinking about her. And then I was thinking like, she had to, try, all you have to do is try. Yeah, we out here trying, y'all. And I've been thinking about this thing of like unfairness, and I'm like, this woman who had no money, no formal education, didn't know how to read or write, ended up having to take care of like all these people, like not just her 6 kids, but her sister's siblings' kids, her cousins' kids, her neighbors' kids. Like somehow everyone always ended up gravitating towards her, and just being like, can you help me? And her just figuring it out. Just, I don't know. And then, dang, iTunes is really out here. Wow. And I'm just like, how the fuck did she make that happen? How did she take care of everyone? And then I'm thinking about like another memory that my mom shared with me not too long ago as well, where my grandma actually died from multiple sclerosis, but they didn't know that that's what she had at the moment. So I mean, she also didn't have the nutrition and the upbringing to sustain an illness like that. And not that like she would have survived if she would have been healthier, but just like maybe could have lived a little bit longer. And so I think about like, she's literally, I don't know if she's living through me right now, or if I'm actually like living her pain and these seizures that I've been having of sadness, and these like convulsions that I've been having that are made out of salt. Like, are these her tears? Like, is this her pain? Is this her? And then I think about, I'm over here crying about, is this just? And how did the woman who helped everyone die and then couldn't even help herself? Like, literally her body just went. So I don't know what the fuck is fair and why things happen and all that fucking shit, but I've been just like trying to listen to her and like listening to the things and seeing things that I'm already doing that are more than what I think they are, and giving myself the credit to fully feel and fully be, and just fucking owning up to it. Like how did the woman who had no formal education make it happen, and myself, the one who's like, well, I went to university, is like literally like buried in all this pain and is not sure how to move, even though I have more mobility now than I did before. And so this piece was made from the lack of mobility that I perceived to have. And I actually randomly went for a run on accident one day. And I was like, oh, I can kind of jog. Like, Evelyn, stop fucking crying. Acknowledge that you have more mobility than you think you do. Stop playing the victim. Or is it because I know sadness so well that I'm just like choosing to be sad? Or because if there's comfort in the sadness because I know it? I don't fucking know. Like, I'm molting. I feel like right now everything in my life that no longer serves me is like in this exoskeleton, and I can like feel it being pulled away from me. But as the exoskeleton is like being pulled, I'm like having to deal with all of these emotions that are like not serving me, but are like not trying to let me go either. It's almost like a battle of like who's stronger. Like the life that I know I deserve to live, or the life that I know and sucks, but I know, so I continue to sit in that comfort. I don't know, like my grandma's just like, I feel like she was like, look, I'm gonna have to make this decision for you because you're not doing it on your own. But I don't know. How do I mourn my old body? And how do I mourn my grandmother's old body? And how do I cry her tears so she can feel at ease? Why don't I feel more powerful about being able to do that? It's only playing through the projector, but I think that's okay. Oh, and that's why you have Bessie on your team. She sees the need.
section over on the left. So over here. So if you want to move, feel free.
So I'm gonna wind up over here, but I just feel the need to like sit down on this floor for a second. I'm like a little bit nervous, so I'm just gonna lay here for a minute and like kind of collect myself. I'm also sort of like reflecting on what I'm gonna present to y'all tonight. And something that I realized just now, being in this space with Evelyn, was that there's very little, maybe there's like characteristically little of my like immediate family in it. And they're on my mind a lot, but really, as probably with a lot of people, not in the most pleasant ways all the time. And Evelyn, what you said about your grandmother, maybe adjacent, similarly, my grandfather, the entire time that I knew him, lived with dementia, but it was never really diagnosed. And through kind of getting away from my family and doing the work that I've learned how to do on myself, I sort of was able to notice patterns of madness and rage and hysteria, but not the kind of hysteria that I'm really attracted to, not like the Medusa shit, but like masculine rage, which is a different thing. And yeah, it's with me, and sometimes I wonder, you know, will I inherit that? Do I become the inheritor of it? I don't know. I'm not really sure where these thoughts are going. I just felt like talking about it. So I prepared this like really hella Aquarius meets Virgo presentation. It's a presentation, it's a PowerPoint without the PowerPoint. It's kind of like, I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about. Okay, I can stand up now. And, hi Caitlin, this is my roommate, Caitlin. I was thinking about Miguel's questions, which he read at the beginning tonight, and how I wanted to think about ancestry. And there are so many ways to approach this. I think about the ancestry that has to do with our DNA and what's in our blood, which is like, feels like a really messy place to go in a lot of ways. And then as a queer person, I think a lot about, and a lot of my work is about, I'm a poet, by the way, BT dubs, poet. So I think a lot about like chosen ancestry. So you know, like queer people, you have your like chosen family, right? But that means that you sort of come into a world that exists because a lot of people didn't have much of a world to exist in and forged that themselves and kind of like gave it to us. So you kind of inherit a history and a lineage. And then I also think as a maker of things about canons, and not necessarily like the canon, whatever that exactly is. Hopefully it's something that everyone in this room can use our bodies and our hearts and our minds to trouble. But that's another kind of ancestry, that's another kind of lineage. So all of that, I'm gonna talk about it with my notes up here, and then I'm gonna read some poems. That's what I do. There's some people from my cohort here tonight. I'm gonna need you all to line edit my work later. joke. It's a really nerdy joke. Yeah, you get it. You get it. Also, like, you know, something to kind of like be in this space with and think about is like, how did everyone get here? And not just get here tonight, like not just like what bus did you get on or what street did you walk down, but you know, what brings your body here? That's a really kind of open-ended and lengthy, it's a durational question. So I don't know, I want to offer that and give thanks for this space and for Evelyn and Bryanna and Miguel and Knockdown Center and all my friends that are here tonight. So yeah, I have these notes, but it's not really a lecture, right? Because that would be boring. That would be like, well, again, it's going to be this thing, this very like, I'm interested now in the way that I'm presenting this information. It's like this tangent going on in my head about the way this is playing out. But it's kind of more like a conversation. If anyone wants to interrupt me, please do. You know, it's like we're having a talk. I just brought notes. That's all. I'm just prepared. So I'm gonna read to you, and thank you for letting me read to you. I didn't necessarily ask, but there's it's a whole conversation about consent and showing up. And anyway, in a sense, as artists, friends, collaborators, as family, chosen or otherwise, and as much as we are bodies and embodied, all of our work as makers focuses on ancestry and lineage, explicitly or not. It is implicit. By this I mean that there are first the somatic facts of us, unalways already, our DNA, the bacteria in our gut and memories, printed in our nervous systems, also our intersections, labels that stick and define us within a socio-political, racialized, gendered, ableized, and class body politic, regardless of what we think or desire regarding any of that. There's the moment of our bodies, historical, with origin and origin and origin still. To say a little more about this, there's an immediacy within a nuclear family that I can read that feels inscribed. Illness, trauma, addiction, communication, or the lack thereof. These things seem as important to me as any other information carried in my genes. There are more or less family stories from the 20th century, but I don't know much beyond that. Ancestors in the Civil War, colonizers. That's real, and honestly I don't know what to do with it, how to square myself as I stand here with them. Farther back, I have ancestors from Scotland and Ireland. My Scottish people were from and called Sutherland, a fact my parents told me, though my first meaningful encounter with them was as an undergraduate in a class where we spent a semester reading Volume 1 of Capital in its entirety. Marx uses Sutherland as his case study for primitive accumulation, or early capitalism. They were among the first peoples in the British Isles, what later became known as the British Isles, expropriated from their lands, moved to newly formed factory towns, and replaced by sheep. Later, so many papers here. Later, reading Mel Urban Painter's The History of White People, I learned that Sutherland, which is paradoxically located in the far north of Scotland, means Southland, and was named as much by the Vikings, who were themselves traders of those they had enslaved. Looking back farther, what can I ascertain? Ancient Celts, Picts, etc. left little information beyond standing stones, cairns, graves, Neolithic fence lines, the outlines of houses, which is all a lot of information, but not easily translatable. Some things are lost to time. I cannot will myself into re-becoming this or that, and what would that mean at any rate? After all, those are relatively modern, nationalistic, colonial identities as well. That's Scotch and or Irish, both separate from and also caught up in matrices of whiteness. For people of European descent, I believe any ancestral consciousness or reclamative project cannot be decolonized without falling into white supremacist trappings and revisionisms. so we need to be hella careful. We often would like to start in our moment and reach way back and under to find our idealized indigenous ancestors, who certainly did exist and as certainly are in some many meaningful ways unknowable. I feel like a lot of times when we white folks talk about our ancestry, we want to start right here and we want to like scoop way under through the years and find this thing that we can claim, to use our dangerous language, with some kind of like purity that comes before the globalized world, and that's just not right. In finding them, we hope to feel the rootedness that our latter ancestors through colonialism have spent centuries trying to sever. We must locate ourselves in that severance. Secondly, there is for many of us our chosen ancestry and lineage. Here I'm thinking specifically of queer elders, of transcestors, of artists and activists, souls rendered visible in our histories and also the nameless. This kind of ancestry isn't only a thing of the past, a relegation or a genealogy. It's not only spirits and ghosts, but a living tether manifested in the fact of our presence, and who and where and how we are. When I was finally able to recognize myself, as a queer, non-binary trans femme, I came and am coming into webs of chosen family. Along with and by virtue of that comes a chosen ancestry. I am possible and have any degree of visibility and safety because they were. Folks in some similar ways to me, though in possibly many more ways, meaningfully not at all. Perhaps we have ancestors that are both for us and not for us in terms of our physical contextualizations. My example is always Marsha P. Johnson, who is a person that I revere as a saint, who I feel a great warmth and affinity to, who I can't get enough of as a person in time, as a personality, as a source of joy. But all of this is ultimately to say as a symbol. And while I do feel a tether to Marsha, Marsha and I's lives could not be any more different. And there's something really deeply, deeply meaningful and important in that difference, which is where my work comes in, which we will get to later. Let's see. So, chosen ancestry is a fucking mess. We're messy. Again, I don't know what to do with it all. It's bound up in privilege and economics and climate change and here I am. Lastly, for my purposes today, there are creative ancestries. I am a poet. A bookshelf for me is a lineage, implies ancestry in similar ways to blood and chosenness. Similarly, canon, a performance space, an archive, etc. They all basically perform the same function. Hopefully the poems will show some of this. So as a question, learn from, lean into, and problematize ancestry and lineages is to do far more than the obvious genealogical work, is to situate yourself in context of land, class, gender, the messiness of America, of race and racism, everything down to the apartment you live in and the forms you try on. In saying all of this, or in making these notes, I feel wrapped in a quilt. There is by no means a sense of completedness, a sense of, hey, Christian, this is who and how and why you are. But in these three vague categories of ancestry I've sort of conjured, there are so many openings for life and work and community and futurity. So often we have to ask ourselves how we can know what we do not know. Do y'all ever ask yourselves that? Are y'all ever like, how do I know what I don't know? How do I go about finding out what maybe I can't know? I think this is where art comes in. And I think this is also one of many human conditions, but is specifically amplified in our times through colonization, genocide, ecological destruction, forced migration, capitalism and its alienations from labor, production, folkways, etc. Whether it's standing stones on rainy islands, remnants of Christianity, astrology, rock and roll, colonization, trans poetry, whatever. No one element shapes me more or less, no matter how much I'd like it to, or might be inclined to focus in on one certain aspect, contributing to the phenomenon of myself. So how does all this manifest for me in dailiness? That was one of Miguel's questions. Ancestry and lineage is more than obsession. It's like the firmament from which we're moving. Asking these questions is of little value if they aren't asked daily, if they aren't ritualized. And that's something that actually Evelyn, you taught me and made me really develop an understanding of, that you can't invoke ancestors sometimes and not others. You can't make work that invokes the past without doing that work on a daily basis. You can't just, it's not something that you say before a performance or a reading. It's something that you have to practice all the time. So if those questions aren't part of one's ritualized daily creative work, if they aren't intellectualized and translated into movement and words, what good are they? I'm literally thinking about this stuff every day and weaving it into my life work. So I perform rituals, materially conjuring more recent ancestors through objects, memories, stories, textiles, photographs, recipes. Less recent and deeply troubling ancestors through practices of decolonizing my psyche from problematizing my subject position, and distant ancestors in Europe through leaving them things they would have had access to: water, butter, plants, burning pine, Yule and solstice celebrations, music and dance, although you have to problematize those as well. I let myself wander often in speculative spaces. What would my ancestors, chosen and otherwise, think about me? What would I feel about worshiping the moon with Celts? How would colonizers hear my words today? What would Marcia and Sylvia, Juna and Gertrude and Oscar think of me? Probably that I was blessed and absurd, familiar and problematic. Who knows? It's emotional labor, political labor, restorative justice, speculative art making. The dissonance that arises here is a road to futurity, and problematizing daily practices is how I'm hopefully working at building a project of futurities, open spaces, cruising queerness, and shit like that. Poetry is the primary mode in which I ask questions and imagine ways of bridging gaps, collapsing time, meeting myself in the act of inquiry, rhythm, breath, and more mess. So now I'm going to read you some poems, if I haven't already read enough. This is called Morning Breath. The light is softening. We can laugh now if we want, snug in autumn wool, docks laced in tacky tights, wind tousling ringlets through wig or mane, drink bubble tea on 2nd Avenue. I'm Rooney Mara and Carol, pleated plaid and beret. You can be whoever you want. There's no better way to be alive. Look how hybrid we are. Difference makes us. I come from down south and my skin is white. Raised boy, but no. Together, there's our history and then there is history. A scaffolding about this city, building, erasing, surrounding us differently. I study sacred sites of queer and transcestors. Star House, for example, was at 213 East 2nd Street. That's where Marcia and Sylvia fed and housed, nurtured and loved, raged, laughed and sang, drank and fucked with people just like us, or so removed from. How much time have we got, on average? Depends. Feels exploitative to say, exploitative to omit. What would it feel like not to hoard and guarantee of tomorrow? I pocket bits of gravel from all over the city simply because people live here. Sacraments worthier than coin and shine. They get heavy, but what doesn't? Now is always the time for crying. Our tears make us look like the fierce-ass femmes we are. One night, it was summer, a man spit in my face. All I could do was keep walking. Keep walking is all I know how to do. It ends well because here I am, writing you. If I am fated to slip through hems, let me glide with names like Miss Major, Alok, and Tourmaline, names like Zephyr and Ash, Anais and S, Destiny, Sam, Cecilia, Monroe, Auntie Kate, and Mixed Viv, names like yours and mine honeying my lips. Better yet, how about I go nowhere, stay right here where my people are. Morning will come, the sky will azure, we'll do our Lazarus swing and care less if we're cis-born. Fast forward, see us fugitive, night lift and spooning in these filthy sheets. Holding you, holding me, our tenderness kept secret from the world. I know it's always been this way, dirty feet, sticky bellies and scratched backs, light sharpening as the street cleaners do their thing. Morning breath mingles like rubble and jasmine tea. You can be my bossy top and me your bratty femme. We forget to wipe yesterday's makeup away, as if tomorrow were guaranteed and we, waking, already had a foot in.
What's it called?
It's called Ancestor Problems, and I was trying to kind of find a jumping off point to think about, it's like, where does all this like European grounded violence come from? And I think I immediately thought of those bog people, those bodies that are found in these Danish bogs that have been ritually killed and are kind of preserved. And bogs are spread across Northern Europe and they're really generated ecosystems, but the maybe ironic thing is that they take in what is dead and then they release methane. And I was like, that's the thing. If all sounds madness, there's sickness at root. My ancestors, peat diggers, sacrificial to bog, sustained through ecology, sustained through death. Picture dead men, peat flat, cut and snapped. Where did my people learn the rope? I pick a scar and shovel, excavate my genes, myth less blue than heirlooms claim. Prodigal children of earth, no one doubts our albatross, save we. Generations ghoul my sleep, moonrise and standing stone, fingers stained like flayed beets or ink off a dollar bill once everything salable's been sold. Ablution, I cannot. There's no water pure enough left in the world. I move my body beyond, light candles, pray for elders, set water, thistle, butter, shepherd's pie, imagine time before ancestor turned, tend the living, suture anger, ask after futures, thorns, the bogs breathing methane to a dying sky. This one is untitled. It's about gender, which is another kind of ancestry, another kind of lineage. Femme is a house wrapped in moss veil and thorn, leaking tar, spilling lights. A person turns pillar in the blast radius of time. Looking back, anger doesn't begin to cover it, our long desert flight so preposterously cold. You put up with hunger as a matter of survival, butt up against a lacking wide as winter, Demeter throwing shade over earth. I learned my masculinity like all the rest, bruise cut, apologies, humiliation, redaction. Any arrangement will do. Man up, faggot. Advice in a nutshell. Wearing a beard, people still called me ma'am. True story. You cannot make home in a lie, in gutters for bodies smaller, softer, bloodier, wombier, dickless, femme-cocked, more hysterical than. I am not special. Masculinity wrings his hands at killing me. Do you know a person, a pillar of salt, a season not embroidered in his flex, his sinew, his story of your pain belonging to weakness rather than you? I still seek validation from those who dragged me, reframe sentience for their clarity. They keep haunting my house of limbs, rabid wolves and tattered wolf rags hounding up the door. I antidote, hex open, devil's bell thirsty for moon. Find me visible, nurturing, sutured, braided by sisters and dying peacefully. The future is trans femmes passing as trans femmes on Main Street, turning tricks for healing. I go out walking down sanitized Hudson piers, rose in my heart for Marcia and Minnie Plus. On Sylvia Rivera Way, I recall Lot's wife, rendered salty, preserved in our desert of sadness. Some of us lack luxury of turning our backs and forgetting where we came from. She is nameless, Lot's wife, nameless. Nothing is ever finished. You are naked, everlasting, a now hard, now molten presence. Some call this horror, some beauty. Elemental, I say, sky pieced together after so generous a weeping. It's fair to wonder how earth can hold us, why we aren't swallowed in the belly of, but some questions answer themselves. You cannot swap a set of bones, nor come from any other ruin. We gather days, dust, brick, bacteria, mortar, form. Consequence gives my body shape, says you cannot build home in a lie. I am not a woman, though my gender is feminine. Even the moon travels farther for what it wants. Mostly I am water, swollen, mourning. Tie a blue ribbon around my finger and forget me. Do you think me monstrous wanting my body my way? You are illegible, someone shouts, and I swallow it down. If you ask me to write a trans poem, must it begin and end in dirt? Gardens, after all, are for growing, stemmy things bending towards sun. We sink heirloom in tidy rows, set away days to brush clean the stone, lay the lily that unfolds slow. My poem is a dream saying, teach me where you're brittle and maybe we can rest there, where breath tethers, limb to toes braided, warm, blue, and knit, where nothing alone is useful and we are lineage. Back in the quiet, I touch myself undone, stars, still stars above turns and brambles, a dark wood weaving beyond city lights. You love the mess, don't you, Christian? Like ancients living years tangled with, before your ancestors toppled all in pursuit of linoleum, phylum, things like that. Consequence just gives and gives. Speaking of gifts, these stones Talia brought from Provincetown to Bed-Stuy, stacked cairn, looking all Venus of Willendorf on my altar next cherries and pine. It tips often whenever wind cusps the windows, curtains bellow and fly. Nude stones unfinished standing together before the world. My poem is, serve those heels tonight, baby. Tuck it tight beneath that onyx dress. How far the moon travels for what it wants. Thank you for being here. I'm not done yet. Maybe one more poem. we're gonna take a little break, unless someone just wants to come up here and use this mic. Walks on water. 1. You return to the river, the music loses you. You, Marcia in the wake, waves brushing the pure wood rot, fanning the wake of you. By account you seemed unsettled, babbled something about packs of men following your every heel, how they threatened, how the current heaves a glistening foam, how you grew weaker and weaker. Summer rolling through plague wound years. Pay it no mind, Marcia, the fight always in you. Were you trying to swim home to Jersey, or hiding in the pier when its soft wood opened up? Were you tired, so tired, all this time, treading? At any rate, those pigs are liars. Days later, you appeared, flotsam, and no one believed it was suicide. Hard enough knowing you'd gone. You were never precious about things, Marcia. The river claimed you, that is all. 2. I go down to the river, the west side hums. The pier's a park now, everyone evicted and swept away. Reframing, they say, cleaning the village heap by heap. Today, it's yachts in glimmer, starched concrete, patches of grass in Christopher Street, destination vacay for coin-swamped gays with time on their hands. Pay it no mind, what was, and is this what they fought for all those years ago? Sylvia's voice rings in my skull, asks, what have you done for liberation? I go out. It's hardly enough. Dropping roses by Stonewall National Historical Site, at stoops where Marcia sat singing, tone deaf and fancy free. Because she and they were, I and we are. There is that much, and on a certain day in June, parades have a go at memory, people party, perhaps a revolution, stilettos and bottles broken where they should. Chase Bank float approach and rainbow flotsam in review. My eyes downturn. Sylvia, Marcia, present. What have you done for gay liberation? 3. I return to the river, think things over. Life is privilege, braid legacy. So many people I have never met. Often I'm afraid of going out as I am. Imagine Marcia meeting you with smiles and hydrangea crowns, above ground, West 4th. Every Marcia walks on water whenever they go out at all. Forward and back, time, movement, the Hudson, persist. Want to talk about flow, but that's so precious. Marcia wasn't, or so I'm told. 2018, waiting to cross highway to shore. Smell the flowers while you can. That's what David said. Sylvia smoking on, living on the bank pre-Whitney. I go out walking, make my body tether all the flesh beneath my heels. Thanks.
Before we move on to our next performance, I do have this extra drink ticket for those of you who stick around, and somebody could win this ticket if you answer the following question correctly. Did I have a past relative named A, Sinforosa, B, Juan Miguel, or C, A, Sin Forosa. B, Juan Miguel. C, Pablo Vasquez. First person who gets it right wins the ticket. Go.
A.
Who said A? Thank you. That was my deep dive into my past. Sin Forosa. It was an aunt on my mom's side, and we don't know anything about her, but that name is incredible. For our next performance, the artist Bryanna has requested two things. One is that for people to present themselves to sit alongside this side, and then also kind of to be where you are already, so you don't have to move at all. But if we could get some folks over here, please, to move over and kind of occupy this space, that'd be really great. Think over there if you want to come here, you'll probably be able to see better. Thank you. And also, there's been the request from the artist to, if you feel free to put tips in here, but pennies only. Thank you.
Where's your lenses? Okay, can we give one more round of applause for Bryanna? Thank you so much for being here. We're gonna be here a little longer. Alexa's just gonna tell you a couple things.
Yeah, well, just thank you to everyone that's here tonight. Thank you for all the artists who shared with us. Thank you, Miguel, for bringing everyone here. We're thinking of you, Camilo. Yeah, so as you know, this is the last Sunday service of the season, but we will be back in March 2019, March through June, first Sunday of every month. So please stay in touch, and we'll see you then.
Thank you for being here.